Hi there, welcome to the studio. Today, my little art studio here, as you can see, we're set up. We're going to be doing a painting today, and Howl at the Moon is what I've entitled this one. Let me show you what we're going to do here. This is, of course, a smaller canvas than what I'm going to paint on today. This was done on a 11 by 14 canvas, and you can see the modeled, and I'll explain what modeled is just a mixture of colors. You can see the variation in colors. That's all modeled means. We painted this blue sky, this dark blue sky. I'm going to show you how to do all that. 3 colors, a few brushes, and we're going to have some fun with that. And so that's the painting we're going to do. I'm going to set that over to the side here so I can have reference to it as we're painting. Now, before we kind of jump in and get started, this blank canvas here can sometimes be intimidating to people, and so I want to help you out with that. What we're going to do is we're going to what they call tone this canvas. We're going to just do away with the white, basically, is what we're going to do, so that we have a nice surface to paint on, and if any of the canvas shows through, it's going to blend in with the rest of the painting, and it's not going to be a stark contrast. But let me just run through materials real quick that we're going to use. You can follow along. All you need is similar. It doesn't have to be exact. If you watch the first video, again, I'm not a stickler for brushes, but let me just bring these up. I'll show you what the ones that I've chosen for this particular painting. I've got a 2-inch, this is called a hake brush. It's just a soft goat hair type brush, and I'm going to use this to paint this background, and that's what I recommend. If you can get away with a really big brush, go for it. So it's just not going to take a lot of time, and you're not going to overwork what you're painting, and it's just going to look better, more painterly, if you want to look at it like that. So I'm going to paint the entire background, both toning the canvas, and then when we get to the sky part of the painting, which we're just pretty much going to paint the whole thing, the sky color and all of that, I'm going to use this 2-inch brush. Then I've got also a 3/4 inch, and this is a nylon type brush that I'm going to use. I've got a number 10 filbert brush, and then just a small, I think it's a number 4 round brush, and I'm going to use a combination of these when we start painting in things like the moon and the trees, and of course the wolf at the end. So you'll need your brushes, so gather that up. You can get away with pretty much anything that you have. Here's what we're using for paint colors. I said in the other video, and I'm gonna try to keep this theme going. I've got several paintings planned out for you that I'm going to bring to you. Liquitex Basics is what I recommend, and here's what I'm using. Liquitex Basics Phthalo Blue. That's going to be our main blue color for the painting. And then I've got Liquitex Basics, that's the Mars Black and Titanium White. Those are the 3 colors that we're going to use. And also down in the description for the video, another thing that I've done, and I do this for all of my Paint with Jim paintings. People come here and paint with us and all of that. Most people are intimidated if you want to have them draw things. So I made these little templates, and what we do when we're painting here, we just pass them around, because we usually only have 4 or 5 of us here painting at one time, so it's not a large group, and we just pass these around and use them. And so we'll use these. This is roughly where our moon's going to be, roughly where our wolf is going to be. And in the description, I've included a link to a PDF document that you can print out. It'll have these templates in it if you want to use it. If not, listen, learn by doing, right? So if you want to try to sketch the wolf in on your own, go for it. If you're a little if you've done this before and you're a little more advanced in your in your artistic ability. Again, I'm kind of approaching this as we start from someone who's never done this before, beyond maybe doing a paint party here or there. So here we go. This is what we're going to do. Templates for the wolf, for our moon. And all right, so that's materials. I'm painting on a 16 by 20 stretched canvas. I've got it mounted in my easel here. And I'll explain a little more maybe in a different video, but I always mount in my easel where I can actually paint the edge. Most easels will hook over this front part, but I usually just push down on the side of the canvas with this top part of my easel. That way I can paint the whole thing. And if you're using a tabletop easel, you can flip that little piece. I'll show you that little trick one of these days. You can take that piece off, flip it around, and do the same thing with a tabletop easel, so you can just paint on the whole. You don't have this section right here that's unpainted when you take your painting out of the easel. That just kind of annoys me a little bit. Anyway, so I have, let me give you the rules, because of course there's got to be rules for everything, right? Right. All right, so here are my rules to paint along, paint with Jim. Rule number 1, have fun. Have fun. That's it. Those are my rules, my list of rules. 1, have fun. If you're not going to have fun when you paint, listen, you're not going to enjoy it. You're not going to do it. So have fun. Let me give you just a couple of tips about your brushes. Acrylic paints are, if you've painted with oils before, maybe you're transitioning into acrylics, which is what I did many moons ago. I started with oils, transitioned into acrylics. It just worked better for me the way that I paint. But you have to, there's a couple of housekeeping things that you have to remember. And let me show you this. I've already put out some paint, of course, the white, the black, and the blue. And from time to time, depending on how long you're painting, you'll need a little spray bottle, and then you can put a little mist over the top of the paints to keep them from drying out. The other thing, and I see this a lot, let me grab my water bowl here, set my tubes of paint over to the side and grab my water bowl. I've got just my bowl here with some water in it, and I see this all the time. People take their brushes and they're done painting and they'll do this. Listen, that is a big no-no with paint brushes, especially if you're like me and you don't spend a lot of money on paint brushes. But then again, if you spend a lot of money on paint brushes, you don't want to ruin them. If you leave the brushes soaking in the water, it loosens. There's adhesive and crimping that goes on to hold all this together, and I don't want to bore you too much. I want to get to the painting. But the best thing to do when you're done painting, is to just dip the bristles in the water and then lay them just flat on your paper plate. And let me bring that over. I showed you the one with the paint on it. This is the one that's going to hold my brushes. So what I'll do when I'm done with that particular brush, I'll dip it in the water, just lay it down there, and that will be perfectly fine for keeping any kind of paint drying in the brushes, and then we don't have to worry about them being damaged either. All right, let's get started. The first thing we need to do is we're gonna put some paint on the canvas. And this part, listen, if you've never painted before, you can do this part right here, because all we're gonna do, we're gonna mix some color. We're gonna come up with like a medium blue gray type color, and we're gonna paint the entire canvas. And just, we want to do this quickly and get it done. It doesn't have to be pretty or anything like that. We just want paint on the canvas and get rid of the white. That's what we're shooting for. So here we go. I'm gonna dip this. I've got this natural hair brush, so it needs to be somewhat wet. You can see I've got paper towels. You're gonna need some paper towels here. I don't want the brush dripping with water. So here we go. I'm just going to start out with some white on one side of my brush, some black on the other side, and then I'm just going to mix blue as we go. So here we go. This will make, and I'm going to throw some blue in there, and you can see we make this nice bluish gray color. If that's too dark for you, you can lighten it up with just some white paint. And all we're doing here is we're just covering the white of the canvas. So if you see any splotches kind of showing through your canvas, you can go through and cover those up. But it doesn't have to be anything major. So we're just looking to get some, if you need just a touch of water to help if things are a little sticky as far as the paint goes. But you don't want to take a lot of time doing this. It doesn't matter if it's streaky or anything, because very little of this is going to show through. We just need to get the canvas toned. So again, just a little bit of water to help the paint flow a little bit, and you can see we're just going to cover up the white of the canvas, right? And then when we paint our blue, you might think, well, why are you doing this? Well, this will help the little specks. If you don't do this and you paint the darker colors, the white part of the canvas will show through. And I know we're going to put stars in here, but we're not doing that everywhere. And so I want to have a little bit of control over that part of the process. And if you do this right here, your painting is just going to look nicer as a finished product. And so I typically always tone, I don't always use these colors, of course, but I'll typically always tone my canvases. If I'm going to do a warmer painting, then I might do some warmer colors. In this case, we're doing a night scene, so we can get away with this kind of medium bluish gray color here. And again, you don't have to take a lot of time doing this. Just get it on there. Make sure for the most part that you don't have a bunch of canvas showing through. And again, brush stroke it doesn't matter what strokes you use, all of that. Just get the paint on there and cover your canvas, and that is good enough. So what I'm going to do for right now, dip my bristles in the water and just lay it right there on my plate. Show you that. That's all I did. Just dip the brush in the water. Now we need to get this dry before we can actually do the next layer. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to pause the video here. I've got a blow dryer. So, I mean, everybody knows, right, what a blow dryer is. I've got a blow dryer. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to dry this really, really well, and then we'll come back and we'll get started painting our Howling at the Moon, or a Howl at the Moon painting. So give me just a second to get this dry and I'll be right back with you. All right, welcome back. I've taken just a couple of minutes is all it took. Seriously, just 2 or 3 minutes with the blow dryer, and this is totally dry now. And now we can get started. Let me grab the original painting here and kind of explain to you what we're going to do. We're going to start with painting the entire canvas. We're going to just paint all of the sky first. We're going to kind of work, think of the most distant thing to the most forward thing. So we're going to paint the sky first, and I'm going to use the blue, of course, and then we're going to mix a little bit of the black in with the blue. That's how I got these darker splotches of color in here, and then of course white with the blue to get the lighter color down here. And if you notice, we'll do about thirds. So the bottom third of our canvas will be a lighter blue color. The middle third, kind of this, just the medium blue, and then the dark blue more in the top. You can see I've kind of mixed it all around, but kind of we've split it up kind of in thirds. And this doing lighter down here just helps our trees show up, gives us a little something to contrast against. So let's get started. Again, I'm keeping this over to the side here so I can reference it. And I'm going to take my 2-inch brush that I have been using. I'm going to grab that and just get some of that gray paint out. That I'm not cleaning it, but just getting a little bit of that gray paint out of there. And so that's all I've done there. And I'm just using the same colors here. Just dip in, get a little bit of water. We don't want too much moisture here, but do need a little bit of water to kind of help the paint flow. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go right into the blue. Right into the blue. And I'm going to just start right in the middle and start painting this phthalo blue color. And you'll say, wow, that doesn't look like a night sky. Well, not yet, but we'll get there, right? So right in the middle here. A little bit too much water in my brush there, so be careful with that. If you're using natural bristle brushes, they hold more water than a synthetic brush. So if you have a nylon brush or some sort of a synthetic, your brush is not going to hold as much water as a natural brush. All right, so there's the middle part of our sky. So now I'm going to keep going with a little bit of the blue down here and mix little bits of the white with it. And we're not going to keep it really streaky here. I'll show you. We're going to blend this all together. But again, a little bits of the blue, a little bit of the white. And where the two come together, I'm just scrubbing a little bit with my brush. And again, just working kind of quickly with the big brush here. It doesn't take a lot of time to get this done. So and you can make it it doesn't matter if it's a little bit streaky. I'm going to kind of blend up where the two parts, the lighter part and the darker part, blend together or come together. I don't want a hard line across there, right? We want it to blend. It's the sky, so I'm going to use these, and I'm using kind of an X-shaped stroke with my brush, and I'm going to mix that together, and you can see how nicely it's blending out. So we got a nice lighter transition to a darker transition. Now let's go up here. We'll do the same thing, only we're going to use touches. And it's, I put out this much black. I probably won't use that entire pile of black for the whole painting. So you'll find you'll always put out more black than you'll ever use. I am going to have to get out some more of our blue. So let me come up this part, just a touch, again, touches of water, not very much. Again, if you're using a bristle brush or a nylon brush, you'll need a little more water, but what I'm going to do, just touches of the black and I need to get some more paint here, so give me a second. Be right back with you here. I need more blue. Go. Got more blue there. So a little bit of the black, not very much at all, but you can see how the black darkens it up. Now in this particular painting, I'm going to go and I'm going to darken the corners a little bit. That kind of help draw your eye into the painting. A little black here, kind of almost like a cloud at night So we got a little bit. We're trying to just paint a night sky here. So a little bit of blue, a little bit of water. Just the enough to just get the help the paint kind of flow on the canvas is all you want in the way of water. And then again, it's the, think of it like a midnight blue, I guess. But don't don't worry about doing exactly what I'm doing. You know, you use your what they call artistic license. Make the painting yours. Have fun with it. Enjoy the process, and just do what you want to do with the painting. You know, if you want a little more black in areas of your sky, man, feel free to do that. Kind of putting myself at a disadvantage here trying to stay in this location and paint, because I can't really step back and see what I got going on here. So I might actually get up and do that here and see what I've got going on. Again, I'm not overly concerned here. I'm just trying to get some color mixed in so that's not all, uh-oh, kind of did a boo-boo there. Let me take care of that real quick. Got a little bit of black too far down in my sky here, so I'm gonna rinse my brush a little bit, grab my paper towel, kind of get some of the water out of here, go back to my blue and white, and kind of deal. You can see where I touched here, and just going to get a little bit of my blue and my white here, and a little bit, just a touch of water, of course. Kind of blend that back out where I mess it up. And that's the beauty of acrylics. Look, if you mess something up, don't worry about it. Go back over it, and just, you know, it's usually good, unless you're doing blending like this, you know, a lot of times it's best to just let it dry. But acrylics, really, they take just a couple of minutes to dry, and then you can go back and blend everything out. But see where I touched down there, I cleaned that up a little bit. Missed a little spot down there too, but that's all right. All right, so again, just kind of blending everything together here. Big, long strokes, and there we go. We have our background. And I'm going to get up, I'm going to step back and take a look at mine real quick, just to make sure that we're doing okay here. And yeah, I think I can live with that. So there we go. That's step one. Our sky is painted in. So I'm going to wet this brush again. Just dip the bristles into the water and set this on my plate over here, my styrofoam plate that I'm using. And now, I told you we were going to use a toothbrush. So make sure you have your toothbrush handy. You could use, if you wanted to use a different type brush for this, you could definitely do that, but I'm just going to use a toothbrush, and I'm going to start with, I'm going to do this in a couple of different layers. I'm always a big fan of doing things in layers. So what I'm going to do first is, I'm not going to do straight white, I'm going to do a light blue that will contrast against this, and I'm going to just sprinkle these up in here. I will tell you, have a damp paper towel handy. I'm just going to use this one here and have it handy. And any of them that you don't like, if you get one that's like too strong or too big, you can just take the paper towel, touch it, and get it right off there. So here we go. I've got another plate that's doesn't have any paint on it. It's dry. I'm going to take a little bit of white. Put it on my plate. I'm going to use quite a bit of water here because we want a soupy mix. So let me make sure you can see that here. And then a touch of the blue. And I just barely touched into the blue. And so what we want is just a very, very pale, you can see that very pale blue color. Lots of water to make this a nice soupy mix. And if you want, you can, and I'm just mixing it really well into the toothbrush. And on the side of your plate here, if you just want to do a test, and you can see that hopefully, how that's sprinkling off there. I like how that's coming off. So what I'm going to do, and again, I've got the bristles pointing away from me. If you do it the other way, there's a good chance you're going to splash yourself in the face with paint. So I always keep the bristles away from me, and that way the paint goes that way. And again, here in my studio, as you can see, I have paint everywhere, so I'm not too concerned about where the splashes go. But if you need to be, you could grab a piece of paper and hold on the edge if you're painting at on a dining room table or something with a tabletop easel. You know, make sure you got things protected so you're not going to ruin them with the acrylic paint. But here we go. I'm just going to start splashing these. And how many and where you put them is entirely up to you. You do have a little bit of working time with this. I will say, if you've ever been out in the dark, like if you've gone camping or you go outside and it's really dark outside, there's lots and lots and lots of stars. So don't just put 2 or 3 on here. Let me show you the little trick with the paper towel I was talking about. If I don't see any that I really don't like, but let's say, for example, there's a big one there that I don't like. I just take the damp paper towel. It's damp, it's got a little bit of water on it, and don't rub. If you start rubbing, you're going to kind of make a mess. So have your damp paper towel over the end of your finger and just come in here and just touch. And that'll soften that up. And if it and take it right off of there without making a mess. Okay? So that takes care of the first layer. Now, what I'm going to do is what happens, acrylics always dry a couple of shades darker than when you put them on. So when I first splash those on there, they seemed really, really bright. But as they dry, they're going to kind of fade more into the background. So let me take just a couple of seconds. I'm going to grab my blow dryer here, and I'll probably just turn the volume down. I'll leave this running at real time so you can see how fast this really happens, but so you don't get drowned out by the blow dryer here. I'll turn the volume down on the video, and then I'll be back with you once I've dried this. Okay, so you can see, seriously, not very long to get that dry. So now I'm going to put my second layer of, and you could do as many layers of stars as you want. I'm just going to do 2 here. I'm going to just get a nice bunch of water on my toothbrush, and I'm going into straight the pure white this time. And again, just mixing it really well into the toothbrush so you can see that. Test it off a little bit on my plate here. Make sure I'm happy with what's coming off, which I am. And here we go. I'm going to just go through and sprinkle a few brighter stars here. All right, I'm going to set that aside for just a second. Now, of course, the toothbrush you can leave in your water if you want. It's not going to hurt that. I'm going to step back, take a look at this real quick, see how I'm liking it. Yeah, I'm liking that a lot, actually. Quite a bit. So there's our stars. And again, I didn't mention in this particular video, but you can see I've got my painting apron on. If you don't have an apron, I definitely recommend some older clothes that you don't care about getting messed up, because the acrylics will mess up your clothes. But in this case, I'm just wearing my apron, and you've probably already seen me wipe the brush and my hands and everything else on this thing. So I get paint all over this thing. All right, so now we need to decide, big decision time, right? Big decision time in our painting. Where are we going to put our moon? Where are we going to put our moon? Well, I think I'm going to put mine, and again, I'll have the template for you in the link below in the description so you can print this out. But I think where I'm going to put mine is right about there. And for purposes of our video today, I'm going to use a white, this is actually a Conte pencil. You could use a white charcoal pencil. It's a pastel pencil, white pastel. And I'm going to you could use any circular shape that you want. And again, the pastel will wipe off once the acrylic paint is all dried up. You can just wipe anything that shows. So there's the shape. I hope you can see. I think you could see that there in the video. But that's all we're going to do. The wolf will be the very last thing that we paint, by the way. So that he comes at the end. But that's going to be our moon. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to switch and use this 3/4 inch brush to paint in the moon. And I'm going to start with like a light blue color, and we're going to paint the moon in 3 different stages. We're going to put a base color in, which we'll call underpainting our moon, and I'm going to do that with a mixture of just a little bit of white with a touch of blue in it, so we get a nice light blue color there, and not a lot of water, but a touch, and just going to paint this in. Now, we'll tell you, as you're doing this, don't take your brush and hold it way up here like this and paint around where you drew your circle. What'll happen is you'll get a ridge of paint, a high area of paint that'll come off the corner of your brush, and it'll stick out from the canvas, and I don't think you'll like that very much. It'll be hard to cover up with other layers of paint. So what I recommend is take the paint and kind of in the middle. You can pretty much do whatever you want. Now, of course, the moon has, if you've gone out and looked at the moon, hopefully you have, there's always like divots and craters and all of that, which are going to be the other layers that we put on. So the next layer we'll put on will be a dark layer, and then we'll come back and do some highlights with almost a pure white. But what I recommend, just kind of put your paint on a little bit bright there. Don't be afraid to experiment either. If you don't like the color, go back and mix something else. And what I'm going to do is right around the edge is I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I don't have a ridge of paint. And so if I do have a ridge of some sort, this big blob of paint, and again, if you want that texture, go for it. That's just not my preference, so If you want that a lot of texture in your painting, and lots of people like that, then go for it. But what I'm doing is just going around the edge. This acrylic's already dry, so I'm just kind of leaning my hand here for a little bit of control and going around just really soft, trying to make this really soft shape of the moon. And again, don't be afraid if it seems like I'm going really fast. Listen, that's what that pause thing is for. So make sure you do that. If you need to get caught up, if you're still trying, hey, I'm still working on my sky, hey, no problem. Hit that pause thing, rewind it if you need to, and go back, get caught up, and I'll still be here when you get back, right? That's how this whole video thing works. So I'm just glad you're here painting along, and if I can get anybody interested in art, I feel like I've just done, I've done my job to, or my duty to society, if you will, because I think a lot more people would benefit, and we're losing art programs in schools and all kinds of things, and listen, it's good for the brain, good for the mind. Get us out in front of the TV. I mean, if all we do, and okay, enough of rambling. Let's get back to painting, right? Finish out this moon here. All right, and you'll see I'm trying to just do different kind of brush strokey looks in there, and that's it. That's what I'm doing for the underpainting, the base of my moon. Now I can't do anything else until that is dry. Once that's dry, then I can go back in with a little bit of darker color and blend that in, and then come back on top with if we try to put the darker the other colors in, it's just all going to blend together. So we need to let that dry so we can come back in and mess with it. I think what I'll do next is move on to, let me bring the reference back to you here. And you can see I've got a couple of different layers of trees. We've got this layer here that's more in the distance, and then we've got this darker layer of trees here that's more in the foreground, and then this cliff that the wolf will be standing on eventually when we get to that point of painting. So what I'm going to do, I think, first is I'm going to paint these distant trees all across here. This furthest row, again, two different values, which gives us distance, a little bit of distance in our painting. We've got this just silhouetted here in these trees. They're pretty much just silhouetted, but it gives us a little bit of distance. So I'm going to use that same 3/4 brush, and I'm going to mix a gray color, and I'm going to paint these background trees, okay? And again, we're kind of focused on this bottom third, so where this light area is, that's where we're going to pull some trees. We're going to put a little taller trees on either side, and that'll help keep our focus in the painting, what they call eye stoppers. So to kind of keep our focus in this area where the wolf and the moon. So we'll bring up some taller ones on the outside, but we don't want them to all look the same. So we'll try to do a good job of having some variety in our trees. So here we go. I'm going to mix up a color again, just using the same 3 colors. I've got black, blue, and white. We're going to actually mix those together, and we'll do a little test here. Again, I recommend you use the biggest brush that you're comfortable using. I tell everybody that comes here and paints with me, you're welcome to use any brush that you want to use. Again, no rules other than having fun, right? So you use the brush that you want to use, but my recommendation is that you use the biggest brush that you can. And I'm just mixing a little bit of the blue and the black here to get this nice dark value. And then to lighten it up, because we want some distance, and things in the distant are lighter and all of that. That gets into composition, and you'll learn that kind of along the way here. But we need to do a little bit of testing. So what I'm going to do is just kind of come in here, and I'm going to touch where I might want a tree to be. And yeah, that's really not what I'm looking for, unfortunately. Let's try a little more blue in that mix. Again, just the blue and the black, that might be closer there. Again, the beauty of the acrylics, you can let it dry for just a few seconds and then paint right over it. So, but again, the blue, the black, and the white to get the color that you want. Again, it's your painting, so you make it the way that you want. I think that's going to be better. Again, the acrylics, keep in mind the acrylics will always dry a shade or two darker. So it's going to be darker than when you put it on. I think that's going to be pretty good for our background trees. And then what we're going to do for the foreground and the silhouetted trees that are in the foreground and the wolf, we'll use almost pure black for that. Black with just a touch of blue to just keep the black from being so such a dead color. I like to put just a touch of the blue in there just to do that. So I'm going to just go ahead, and what I'm doing is I'm taking this flat, and I recommend if you have a flat brush, you can pretty much do this with any brush, though. You could actually use a round brush for this also, but I'm using this. It's a 3/4 inch flat brush, and I'm going to start out, and we're just going to paint pine trees, but you paint any trees you like if you don't like the pine trees. But I'm going to start, just make a vertical line, and then out of that I'm going to start about halfway down my tree here, and I'm going to start making some marks and pulling out my branches. And the reason I start in the middle is if you start at the top and work your way down, sometimes you can get your trees just way too big. So I'm just using my brush, kind of flipping it out there and shaping the edge. And it's good if you see you have sky coming through. Again, you want to have some good shape to your trees. So I'm just using the corner of the brush and pushing out to make these shapes for the trees. So again, the corner of the brush. And you just want a good shape, a good composition for all of your trees. We're going to paint these all along here, so again, just enjoy the process, because it's going to take you a few minutes to do this, of course. Come up and just, of course, the top is narrow. You got to just get your perspective correct. Top is narrow. Less of the branches. And don't be afraid too if you want to just put we've all seen pictures, or if you've actually been different places, you'll see out in some of these places there's always dead trees. So you can just take your brush, again I'm using the 3/4 brush, and on my plate here, back and forth, I've got it to a sharp point, and if I want to put a dead tree in there, I can just, there you go. And if you want some little branches coming off of it, you can do that as well. And again, I'm just using this brush for the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is just, you really need to have some of these, and you want some that are taller, some that are shorter. This one over here on the edge is going to be probably the tallest one, so we'll bring it up probably about like that. And I need to get busy and stop talking, or we'll be here forever. So again, corner of the brush, all directions, pulling out to make the branch shapes. Hopefully you can see that there. I'm just using, when I start, I'm mixing the paint on my plate here. And then so I've got a really sharp point, and then I'm just using the corner. So if going this way, and I'm using this corner of the brush. And then for the other side, it's the same thing. I use the corner of the brush, come this way. And then making sure I get a shape that I like. I'm actually going to make this guy a little bit fatter, I think. Again, the color up to you. A little bit of black, a little bit of the blue, touch of the white. Kind of keeping the same tones. Got that a little bit dark. Always got time to mix the right color, so make sure you take the time to do that. There we go. Fill in this corner down here. I'm going to fill in a little more solidly, I think. So there you go. I think what I'm going to do, so you've seen me do a couple of these trees here, is I'm going to just buzz across here. I'm going to kick you into time lapse for this. You watched me paint this one, you've seen me paint the dead one, and then the corner down here. If you need to, you can pause the video, you can rewind it, rewatch those parts, but I'm going to jump this part into time lapse just so I can get these background trees in and not make the video extremely long. So here we go. All right, as you can see here, I put all of these background trees in, and they show up really nice against this lighter part of the sky down here. And again, I know I did that in time lapse for a lot of these, but I kind of walked you through doing that. And I'm going to paint some more of the trees when we get to the foreground trees that are mostly black. I'm going to do that, and I'm actually going to do that with a different brush just to show you that you don't have to get locked in with just one type of brush. You can use a round brush or a filbert brush. I have both of those over here, and so I'll probably do a little bit of the rest of the painting with that. But I think the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to try to finish out our moon here, and I think to do that, I'm going to try and get put that pastel pencil on there, and I'm just using a damp cloth. Remember, I have my paper towels, and I just shove them in my little easel here, and I just have a little bit of water, and it comes right off. It really, that's the beauty of using charcoal or pastel or something like that to sketch with. It just comes right off. And again, we're not trying to make anything look like a photograph. I mean, what's the point? If you're just going to take a picture and you want to have a photograph, print the picture and hang it. We're trying to do something that looks like a painting. So what I'm going to do here is, just for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to work on the moon here, and I think I'm going to reposition the camera. So bear with me for just a moment. I'm going to reposition the camera. I think I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. Okay, I've repositioned things. I've got you zoomed in here, and you can see our moon. And that's what we're going to work on. We're going to essentially put the finishing touches on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up a blue color that's about 2 shades, maybe 3 shades darker than what's on here. I'm going to put the dark in first and then the light. So I'm going to mix up the darker blue first. So a little bit of white on your brush. And I've got a round brush and a filbert brush. I think I'm going to use the filbert brush for this. And I'm just starting with a little bit of white and a little bit of blue to try to get a darker color. And basically we just want to model in, and you can do any design. What we're doing is putting in like the divots, the craters, I guess you would call divots, not really. You have divots in golf, not on the moon probably. But putting in probably the craters. We've all seen pictures of the moon or walked outside and looked up in the sky at the moon. And if you want to put the proverbial man in the moon and all that, go for it. But what I'm going to do, see, I've got a darker blue color here, and just touch it and see it's a darker blue. And I'm just going to take some of this blue and I'm just going to make some marks. And I'm just going to do some random stuff. It doesn't have to be anything. Like I said, you kind of do yours the way that you want to do. You're the artist, so you do it the way that you want. That's pretty much all I'm going to do with mine. Is just I'm going to throw some of that dark in there. I'm going to reach over and I'm going to rinse a good bit of that darker blue out of my brush. I'm not really going to clean my brush. I'm just rinsing it in the bowl of water, and then I'm going to come back in with the white. And pretty much just pure white at this point. Maybe just the slightest tad of blue in it to just kill it from being pure white. But and then I'm going to come back in, and you can see. And don't be afraid to use your fingers. All these paints are non-toxic and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually probably a little bright. So I'm going to tone that down just a tad with some blue. Oh yeah, that's better there. And I'm just gonna dab in some highlights into the moon, drag it around. Again, I'm just using this filbert brush, and just again, we just want a mottled color here. So got the white of the moon, and we can go back and forth. I'll show you that. Let me just, again, I'm just modeling on some of this white paint, and I like the brush strokes. If you don't like the brush strokes, then by all means, do it in a smoother way, a way that you like it. And again, it's your painting, so I do it the way that you want. I'm going to come back in while this paint is still wet with some of the darker paint, and just to help maybe blend it together a little bit, and have some of the light spots and dark spots. And if anything catches my eye that I don't like, I'll work on it, blend it out. But that's pretty much going to be it for the moon there. That's really all I'm going to do with it. Maybe just go back on top here with a little more of the highlight color, or just white with just a touch of blue in it is all I'm using for a highlight color there. But that's pretty much all I'm going to do. Okay, I've repositioned. You should see the entire canvas in your frame. I'm not concerned at all about you seeing me. It's not the point of the video. The point of the video is you hopefully following along and being able to make some progress. And I think we've got a nice looking painting so far. Well, let me grab the original again. I'm going to block your view here for a second. Let me apologize for that. So here's our reference. And what I'm going to do now is I want to paint this ledge or this cliff that get something to point with here. I'm going to paint this cliff right here. And pretty much just going to use solid black for that. I'm going to take and put just a touch of blue in with the black so that it's not just pure black. But I'm going to paint this little ledge in here, and it's just this shape. We're going to kind of come up, flatten out a little bit, round this corner, and come down like that. And you'll see when I do that, if you want to try to sketch it in with some charcoal, you can, but I recommend you just kind of go for it and paint that little shape in. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm going to use this round brush, and I'm going to show you how to paint some of the trees, and I may even do a couple of the trees, these darker ones, with the filbert brush, just to show you how, you know, you don't have to be locked in. In fact, if you use multiple different brushes to paint the same thing, it actually can make the painting a lot more interesting using multiple brushes. So let me set this back over so I can use it as a reference. I'll block you one more time. I apologize for that. All right, I got that. Got my reference so I can see it, and I'm just making sure my brushes are all nice and wet, the ones that I've been using, so I don't get myself in trouble. I think what I'm going to do is I'm not going to use the round brush to paint the little section in here. I'm going to use a little bigger brush for that. So I think I'm going to go back to the 3/4 inch brush for that. And again, I recommend any shapes that you can do, and I'm just wiping excess water out of the brush is what I'm doing right now. If you're watching me with the paper towel, I'm not really trying to clean the brush or anything. And then I'm going to go right into my black, and see I'm still using these same colors that we started with, the black, the blue, and the white. In this case, I'm using phthalo blue. If you have ultramarine blue, that's fine as well. It's just going to look just a tad different with the color of blue. But I'm going to do mostly all of the rest of the painting, because all we have left is we have to paint our little cliff area here, and then some foreground trees, and we'll paint them kind of in between these other shapes, so we don't want to paint exactly where the other trees are. So we'll paint in and around just to have a good composition there. But I'm going to do a little bit of blue, mostly black with a little bit of blue, and paint in. I'm going to start down here and paint up this way, and then come around and down in my cliff. I'm going to come approximately a third of the way. If you want a reference, I'm going to come about a third of the way, which is probably going to block most of this tree right here that I did. But stuff in the background, usually don't worry about that anyway. You just kind of paint knowing that some of it's going to be covered up. But in case it shows, it needs to be there. So here we go. I'm going to take, like I said, mostly black with a touch of blue, but mostly just black. So I'm just mixing a little bit of that down here on my plate, a little bit of the blue and the black together, and then I'm just going to jump in and a little bit of moisture again to help the paint flow a little bit. If it starts getting sticky, again, use a spray bottle. I've got a spray bottle here, so if you need to do that, if your paints start getting, they'll get a film on top of them if you let them dry out. But if you mist them with the spray bottle, you can paint for a long time. We do typically about 3 hours for a paint with Jim thing, and when we're doing a painting like this, I'll usually block it in about 3 hours, so to kind of get everybody and if somebody needs a break or something like that. So if by misting, that it keeps the paints workable, and we don't ever have an issue with paints drying out and people not being able to paint and all of that. So here we go. I'm gonna just start down here. We're gonna come up this way with our cliff. It's gonna come to about right here, start going back down. And again, I'm just drawing with my brush. If you're more comfortable sketching this in with a piece of charcoal or a pencil, by all means, go for it. And then I'm just going to bring it back down like so, and then I'm just going to fill it in with this dark color. And this is going to be, let me get a little bit of paint on here and I'll show you. And I'm also a fan, you'll notice me when I paint, I'll try to remind myself to stay way back on the end of the brush. And again, we don't want detail. This is a silhouette kind of thing here in the foreground. So we're just doing this in a dark color. But hold back on your brushes. Try not to use the traditional, like you would hold a pencil. Try not to do that. Try to get yourself out of doing that as much as possible. I still fight that from time to time, but I try to get myself out of doing that. Now let me kind of show you how this is going to work here. I'm going to actually bring this out a little bit, make myself a little better shape here. There we go. A little happier with that, I think. A little better shape there. And like I said, approximately a third, but again, don't get hung up on that. Let me show you how this is going to work. We're going to take our wolf and then position our wolf when we go to sketch it in. We'll position him somewhere in here. Sketch it in and just paint it in with the dark color. So I think what I'm going to do now is, because I know somebody's going to ask, well, what if I don't want to paint my trees with a 3/4 inch brush or a flat brush? What if I want to use a different kind of brush? Well, let me just show you real quick brush maintenance here. Just take the bristles on your brush, get them wet, and once it's wet, just lay it down over on your plate that you're using, and you won't have a problem with your brushes getting dried out or anything like that. So I'm going to use a couple of different brushes here. I'm going to start and use a round brush. This is and again, don't get hung up on brands and sizes, but this just happens to be a number 4 round brush. And let me just show you. I'm going to use that same dark color that I used here. So this dark color, and it's just black with some of the blue in it. Mostly black, right? Mostly black, but some blue to kind of make it not. And what I'm doing here, hope you can see I'm spinning because it's the round brush. Spinning it, bring it to a point. So you can see that keeps its shape there. Hopefully you can see that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a few of these trees with this round brush, and then I'll put a few in with the filbert brush, just kind of show you. And again, I'm going to go in and around some of these shapes just so I have some good composition. And I don't want to compete with my wolf or my cliff here. So I think I'm going to bring one right here. So see that I just put the line there where my tree is going to go, starting in the middle. And with the round brush, you can paint from the outside in and paint your branches. Or you can paint from the inside out. It honestly doesn't matter however you want to do it. We're just making the impression of trees. Now again, this being a synthetic brush, I have to reload a little more often and use a little more moisture to do that. But we just want to give the impression of some trees. And again, they don't have to be perfect. In fact, what I'm going to do underneath here is I'm going to pull up another one here and just kind of have this. I want a little bit of the background showing through here. You know, and that's pretty much it with you want a little bit of moisture. I mean, see, I'm not putting so much water that it's running down. I'm holding the plate vertically here, and so I'm not putting so much that it's running down, but I am using a fair amount of moisture here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through here and going to paint. And again, don't make them all the same size, all the same height and all of that. I'm going to just do the tip of one right there along the bottom. And as I go across, I'll just keep pulling these up. And you can hear the dog having fun upstairs in the background. So there's that process with the round brush. Let me grab the filbert brush real quick. I'll show you the same process with that. I need to get this, the one I painted the moon with, so I'm getting a little bit of the blue and mainly trying to get the white paint out of it. So let me just do that real quick. And again, just mixing the mainly black, mostly black, a little bit of the blue, and that's what we're going with for our color here, and just kind of work our way across. With the filbert, I've just loaded some paint on and kind of back and forth this way to bring it to an edge, or so it makes an edge, has a nice point to the edge. And let me come over here, and there you go. I just worked way down, and then similar way that we did with, if you go back and look at the section with the edge of the 3/4 inch brush, we want to do the same thing with this. So from the edge, we'll kind of work our way out this way. So again, don't be afraid to use different brushes and whatever you have brush wise, but don't be afraid to experiment. You'll find different brushes that you'll, depending on what you're trying to paint, in this case trees, you'll find some that work better for you than others, and some that you like better than others. Again, if you use, like I've already painted the background trees, I did that with a flat 3/4 inch brush. I painted some of these trees with a round brush. Now I'm using a filbert. By switching it up like that a little bit off and on, what that does is basically gives your painting a little more interest. And again, just with your shape on your trees, if you're going to put the pine shape to them like this, you know, you just keep pulling it like that. You want to make sure that you don't get the top of your tree too thick, because, you know, trees are narrow at the top and thicker as you go down. So here's what I'm going to do. Just paint across here, so you can see there. And I'm not doing them all solid. You can see stuff through there. The other thing we want to do is, just like we did with the lighter color, you could use the round brush. In this case, I've got the filbert. Bring it to a point on the end and bring in some of the dead trees. So kind of in here, I'm going to pull one down like that, and if I want, I can put a couple of the dead branches hanging off like that. But I can go in and through here and put a lot, you know, if I want one that's a little taller, for example, pull that down. So what I'm going to do, that I've given you this little section here and shown you how to do the cliff part. Our wolf is going to be here. Got the cliff here, and I'm going to just kick this into time lapse. You've watched me paint a couple of these trees already with different brushes. I'm just going to stick with the filbert brush at this point, and I'm going to finish going across here. And again, I want to be able to see both colors. So here you can see the dark color, and you see the lighter color in the background. It just gives your painting a little bit of depth. So again, it's your painting, so you know, make it look the way that you want it to look. And I'm just going to kick into time lapse. All right, I think that's all we're going to do right now for the foreground stuff. You can kind of work on that, get it to look the way you want. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of position, and again, I've got down in the description, if you want, here's what I used, and it's just a thick piece of paper. It's like a 160 or 180 pound piece of paper, just some that I had laying around. Just cardstock will work, anything like that. And really you can make a circle out of anything, but that's the shape I used for the moon. Here's the template for the wolf. You can see I dripped a little paint on that, but that's no big deal. What I'm going to do is just kind of position the wolf where I think I want him to be. I want him to be kind of out on the ledge here, howling up at the moon. I think I'm fairly happy with that. So you can see that there. And then I'm just going to take, again, just so you can see it, I will take my white pastel pencil, get a dark background so we'll be able to see. I'm just going to take this and again I'm just tracing shape here of the wolf, and then we'll find a brush. I'll probably use the round brush for this. What I want to do is I'll get the bulk of the wolf blocked in here, and we're just going to use the same. There he is. Okay, so there's your wolf sketched in. So those of you that don't draw, there you go. I made it a little bit easier for you. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the same color that I used for all of these foreground trees and the cliff here, and again, mostly black, mostly black, a little bit of the blue mixed in. And what I'll do is I'll just block most of this in, and then when I'm ready, what I'm going to do, because you'll want to pull your brush, take the whatever brush you're using, round brush, or in this case the filbert brush, and to give the impression of some fur. And what I'm going to do, I'll reposition the camera for that, so get you up close so you can see how I do that, and maybe help you with that a little bit. But for right now, I'm just gonna, this is somewhat paint by number if you want to look at it like that. Just block this, and what I'm doing is the thickness of the pencil will kind of make this look funny, but once it's all dried and we can get rid of the pencil line, it'll actually look really nice. Okay, so let me take a couple of minutes here. Again, you can handle this if you've got your template and you've got the wolf sketched on here. You you can handle this. Again, just a bit of advice if for you. You don't want to get a big blob of paint and this go around this edge. You won't like the result as much if you have this hard ridge of paint out there. So what I like to do is when I go around the edge like that is just pull in with my brush, shape it, and I can go like this, so I can paint like that if I want to, but then I just go back over it and pull it down or pull it in from the edge like that, so there's not a big buildup of paint. That's what we're trying to avoid. I don't know if you can see right here. I got a buildup of paint, and what I'm going to do is just kind of pull down, and it'll flatten that out. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do around here. I'm going to finish doing this again. I think I'm going to kick this part in a time lapse because it's not really instructional at this point. I'm just filling in the lines. So let me go ahead and get this done, and then I'll bring you back in. I'll reposition the camera once I'm all done with this, and reposition the camera, bring you back in, and let you see how we can put some make it look like the wolf has a little bit of fur. All right, let me bring you back in here. I've repositioned the camera, and you saw me in time lapse. I painted in the wolf with, again, mixture of just mostly black with the blue. Okay, so that's the color here for all this foreground stuff. And what I'm doing is I'm just dipping in my water bowl off to the right there, and getting, again, it's not so soupy that it's running down, but I am using some water in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this round brush, and any place that I want to have fur, like on the tail, for example, and I'm going to take this brush and I'm going to pull out a little bit on around the edge so that it gives the impression that there's some fur maybe standing up along the back, along the tail. So let me just show you how I'm going to do that. Again, the round brush, I've got you zoomed in here so you can kind of see, and I'm just going to start on the inside where I've already painted dark, and then just gently kind of work my way so that it looks work my way all the way around, and you can see it kind of gives it that fuzzy edge. And if you want, you can work your way. I'm going to work because I would think of the wolf being in an excited state like this and howling, that some of this hair on the back is going to be standing up. So I think what I'm going to do is start kind of on the back here, and I'm going to pull up just a little bit of the fur all along the back here. Just makes it a little more believable, I guess, that, you know, we're painting a wolf and we just didn't paint. So, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Just doing that is enough to let somebody know that, hey, the wolf has some hair. And another place where I would like to do that is along this front side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this side as well. Pull down, what do they call it, tufts of hair, and just kind of pull around and out like that a little bit. If you have any places that you can see I wiped off, I actually after I kicked into time lapse, I took the blow dryer and dried this guy off, so I don't skip any of the steps. I don't want to do that. I don't want to skip any of the steps on you. You'll notice in part of the time lapse, I grabbed the blow dryer, I dried this guy off, I took my damp paper towel, and it got rid of the white pencil. If you're using if you're not using a white pastel pencil like me, then you may not have to worry about that. If you're using just a regular pencil or a piece of charcoal or something, it may not be that big a deal. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to shape so you can actually see the end of the nose a little better. And the mouth, so it actually looks, so you can see that kind of looks like the mouth is open on the wolf there. And then one other thing is that I'm going to do is just kind of define so it has more what looks like an ear. Again, just to kind of make our wolf a little more believable. And there you go. You have a wolf that's howling at the moon, and I think we're going to call that one done. Let me zoom back out, show you the finished product there, and hopefully you had fun following along and all of that. Here we go. I'm going to zoom back out here. A little bit more. There we go. Got a pretty good position for you there. Try to get you front and center if I can, so you can see there. All right, and that's pretty much it for the painting Howl at the Moon. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'd love to have your comments and all of that. If you thought this was too long, too short, things that I could have done better, instructed better, explained better, any of that, since I'm new at this video thing, drop some comments, send me a message, whatever you want, and let me know. I've got several other paintings planned, so I will get to work on those as I have time and get them uploaded. Again, if you like this video, let me just encourage you to give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, invite folks to join us. So there we go, there's the thumbs up. So give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I hope you enjoyed painting this with me, this Howl at the Moon, wolf howling at the moon.